K.W. Kruger presents The Obscura Dossier. Episode 15. The Sound of War. Statement of Lieutenant Scott Marsh regarding his time during service in the ANZACs during the Gallipoli campaign of 1915, May through to June. Statement begins. 9th of May, 1915. We have been ashore some days now, though the hours bleed together so that I could not rightly tell you how long. The landing itself was hell, and I don't care to write of it yet. Since then, we have been set into these trenches, clinging to the hillsides, like rabbits in their burrows. Only our burrows stink and bleed. Life here is strange. You would think that a man might grow used to it in time, but I feel as though I am only beginning to understand how we are to live. The sun beats down hard enough to crack the lips, yet the ground underfoot is damp. And when the rain comes, it turns everything to mud. We spend hours shifting sandbags, scraping earth, and trying to make some comfort where none exists. The flies are worse than any bullet, swarming the moment you try to eat or close your eyes. At night, they crawl into the ears and nose, so a man learns to sleep with his face wrapped in his tunic if he can. Food is as thin as the patience of the men. Hard biscuit that will break a tooth if you're not careful. Bully beef that is already turned in the heat. Some lads joke that the flies are meant to be eaten, for at least they're fresh meat. There is a bit of humor in it, and without that humor, I don't think many of us would stand it. I have found the men good company, even if most are as rough as the bush we came from. There is Harris from Melbourne, who sings when the mood takes him. Yesterday he gave us a music hall number, shouting it at the top of his lungs until we all laughed, even those who hadn't the energy for it. And O'Reilly, who swears more than any priest could ever forgive, but has a knack for cards and can always find a way to make us sit in on a game. I cling to these small things, for they are all that keep the mind from wandering to darker thoughts. I try to think of home often, when it comes to me, strangely. The quiet paddocks, the sound of the river at dusk, they feel like dreams now. Even in my imagining, I cannot escape the sound of the guns. They pound away at odd hours, sometimes near, sometimes far, but never gone. The rifles, too, always cracking, sometimes close enough that a man ducks without thinking. For now, I try to write when I can, to set my thoughts down so that I may return to them one day when this is behind us. God willing, there will be such a day. 18th of May, 1915. The days here are much the same, though the men say that is a blessing in its own way. You work, you eat, you try to sleep, and if you wake to see the dawn, then you count yourself lucky. That is the life on this peninsula. It has been hot as blazes, the flies worse than ever. They coat everything, swarming so thick on the dead that the earth itself seems to crawl. The stench carries with the wind, and there is no escaping it. We choke it down with the biscuits, force it away with tobacco smoke when we can spare it. The nights are harder. The Turks send shells into the trenches at odd hours, and we fire back when we can. The noise never stops. Even when you think it might, there will come the crack of a rifle or the distant thunder of a gunship out in the bay. At times, I catch myself listening for it, as though waiting for the next strike. My heart lurches when it comes, but it lurches too when it does not. Last night, a fog came in from the sea. It was thick as milk, curling low into the gullies. We stood to in case of an attack, peering out into the whiteness, rifles at the ready. None came, though a few men swore they heard movement beyond the wire. The fog makes liars of us all. I thought I heard something myself, not shouting nor rifle fire, but something lower, a sort of hum, deep and steady, almost like a ship's engine. I asked O'Reilly if he heard it too, but he only shook his head and spat. Perhaps it was only my imagination, worn thin by too many nights without proper sleep. Still, when the fog lifted and the guns started again, I found myself relieved. Better the din we know than that strange quiet that presses in around it. I do not tell the others such things. Best to keep it to myself. They would laugh, or worse, think me rattled. But I write it here so that I might not forget. 27th of May, 1915. The guns are worse of late. It feels as if they have crept into my very marrow. I catch myself flinching at sounds that aren't even shots. A shovel striking stone. A man's cough. Boots thudding on duckboards. Every noise here is sharpened. Too near. Too raw. There is no such thing as quiet. Only a lesser degree of noise. 2 nights past, during a lull, I heard something that did not belong. At first, I thought it was just the rifles echoing strangely off the gullies, but no. It was different. There was a pattern to it. The guns crack at odd intervals, sharp and scattered. This was not scattered. It was a steady rhythm, a cadence rising and falling like a chant. It threaded itself through the gunfire, so faint I thought I imagined it. But once I caught hold of it, I could not let it go. It was not Turkish. It was not ours. It was as if the noise of battle had been pulled tight into a single sound, long and low, humming through the bones of the earth. It filled my chest until I felt sick with it. I asked Harris if he heard anything strange. He only shook his head and laughed, told me that I needed sleep. Perhaps he is right. Sleep comes in scraps, a doze here, a twitch there, until you wake with your heart racing and your hand on the rifle. Still, I know what I heard. Last night, when the fog came again, the sound was stronger. Not constant, but waiting in the spaces between shots. The rifles barked, the guns boomed, and then, in the breath between them, there it was. The low hum. The wrongness. As though the air itself was grinding together. I felt it in my teeth, my jaw aching as if I had bitten down far too hard. I stayed awake long after the others slept, listening. I thought if I could trace it, I might make sense of it. But the harder I listened, the less it seemed part of this world. It was inside the other sounds, shaping them, drawing them into something else. I do not know how long I sat like that, ears straining. The candle was burning low, but when at last the guns fell quiet, I swear I still heard it. Faint, waiting, 2nd of June, 1915. They sent a handful of us forward last night. Harris, O'Reilly, myself, and 2 lads I barely knew. A push across no man's land to test the wire, though to what end I cannot imagine. The order came, and so we went. The air was thick with smoke, the stench of cordite and blood clinging to every breath. We kept low, stumbling from shell hole to shell hole, rifles clutched tight in our hands. I remember thinking only of putting one foot before the other and not of the open sky above us. Then came the shell. A scream in the dark, a whistle that sank into the gut before the world split apart. The ground heaved, fire and earth and steel tearing through us. I do not remember falling, only waking in the pit it left behind, my ears ringing, my leg afire with pain. Harris was there beside me, half of him gone. O'Reilly groaned somewhere in the dark. The other 2, I did not see them again. I lay there, clutching the earth as if I might fall from it, and through the smoke and the ringing in my head, I became aware of the fog. It had rolled in silent, thick as wool, curling low into the shattered ground. Shapes moved in it. Not men, not anything that belonged here. The war made flesh, if flesh it can be called, rose before me. It was a body built from the ruin itself, a cacophony of steel and sinew, rifles jutting like bones, barbed wire strung across its limbs as though stitched into the skin, its shoulders heaved with the crash of cannon fire, its torso warped with the groaning twist of bent metal. Smoke clung to it like a shroud, but through the haze I saw flashes of pale, broken faces, half absorbed into its bulk, mouths stretched wide in silent screams. Every part of it was noise. The crack of rifles stitched into its arms, the boom of artillery hunched across its back, the rattle of machine guns chewed through its chest like a heartbeat. And where its face should have been, there was only a jagged tear, a black wound spilling forth the screams of the dying, the cries of the loss, the endless roar of battle. It bent and took Harris as though he weighed nothing, not with hands or claws, but by drawing him up into itself. His body rose slack and broken and dissolved into the seething mass. Steel, flesh, and fog folding around him, and the creature swelled, shuddering with new sound. For a moment, I thought I heard his voice inside it, thin and stretched, calling my name. It moved from corpse to corpse, lifting them, drinking them in, each one vanishing into that storm of ruin. With every soul it took, the guns seemed louder and the night darker, until I could hardly tell whether the war fed it or it fed the war. O'Reilly groaned again in the dirt beside me, and I pressed my hand hard over his mouth, praying it would not hear. I do not know how long it lingered. The guns thundered on, and the shape grew more solid with every strike, as though each shell gave it flesh, each cry gave it strength. At last, the fog shifted with the wind, and the thing was gone, but the ringing in my ears has not faded since. I write this with hands that shake, my leg bound but bleeding still. I do not know if I will see another dawn. I only know this: the war is not ours alone. Something else walks here in the fog and the thunder, and it feasts on us, surely as the bullets and the shells. 14th of June, 1915. I awoke in the medical tent 2 days past, though for how long I was there before waking I cannot say. They tell me I was carried back from the line half dead, pulled from the hole left by the shell. My leg is bound and stiff, but whole enough to carry me again if I choose. O'Reilly is alive. He lies in the cot beside me, his eyes open, but his lips tight shut. He has not spoken a word since we were brought here. I cannot say if he saw what I did in the fog, or if the blast took his tongue in ways no doctor can mend. Sometimes when the guns rumble in the distance, I see him flinch. Perhaps he felt it as I did. Perhaps he still feels it. I tried to tell them, the orderlies, the officer who came to question me, even the chaplain. The words poured out, fevered, desperate, of fog and figures and men devoured by something greater than war. They shook their heads and muttered the word shell shock and pressed a draught to my lips until I slept. When I woke again, the decision was made. I am to be sent home. A medical discharge, a mind unfit for the line. I should be glad. Others would give anything for the ship that waits to carry me from this cursed place. And yet I am not glad, for I know what I saw. I know what waits in the fog, feeding on our noise, our terror, our blood. They call me cracked, a mind broken by guns and the pressures of battle. But I know the truth. I feel as though I slipped its grasp by a hair's breadth, that it might have taken me with Harris, drawn me into itself until I was nothing but another scream in its belly. But I was spared, for now. And that is the worst of it, that I am not free, only marked, eternally afeared that it will come for me once more as it did Harris, as it has taken countless others before him. That one day, in some quiet moment, I will hear the guns again when no more guns are firing, and I will know it has found me at last. I am to be sent home, but I will never be rid of Gallipoli. The war will follow me. Statement ends. The journal of Lieutenant Scott Marsh was returned with his effects following his medical discharge from Gallipoli in 1918. The official records state only neurasthenia due to shell shock. Beyond that, there is little. Marsh arrived back in Australia in September of that year and lived quietly on his family's farm until his death in 1938. O'Reilly, the other survivor mentioned in these pages, is more elusive. His name appears briefly in battalion rolls for the following month before vanishing without explanation. No further service records can be located. Marsh's journal itself is intact, though the later entries show signs of a trembling hand. Several loose pages, clearly written years after his return, have been pressed into the back cover. They contain only a few phrases, repeated over and over until the paper is nearly torn through. It hasn't finished. The sound follows. I still hear them when it is quiet. His family reported that in his final years he could not endure silence. The wireless was left running at all hours, often turned to nothing but static. When asked why, Marsh would only say, "It's safer when the noise is ours." No evidence exists to confirm the truth of what Marsh describes, yet there is something unsettling in the way his words echo other accounts. Scattered across decades and wars, where men speak not only of the chaos of battle, but of something within it. Something that listens and hungers. This is being filed under anomaly code H-1915-Delta. Classification: biophoric entity. Status: Inactive or recurring, unconfirmed. Priority, low. End recording. The Obscure Dossier is a podcast created by K.W. Krieger, licensed under a Creative Commons Non-Attribution Non-Share-alike 4.0 international license. If you enjoyed today's episode, follow us on Reddit at The Obscure Dossier, like us on Facebook, and as always, thanks for listening.